A man in rural Wisconsin steps outside his house, looks up, and captures what might be the clearest UFO footage seen in the area this year.
I've got 4 shots straight up out of my camera. I will swear under oath these are the original shots from my camera, and I don't know what they are. UFOs for sure.
The object isn't blinking like a plane. It isn't moving like a drone.
This photo isn't edited at all. I didn't even change the brightness. I didn't crop it. I did nothing. This is the original photo out of my camera.
And what happens next is what's raising the biggest questions.
Oh, what the heck?
It looks like a
There's
roller
little
coaster.
lights. There's little lights.
I'll show this on the screen too. Here,
Humans
I'm gonna
could
take
not fit in
I'm gonna
that.
take a screenshot.
Oh
Right now.
my gosh, Baxter freaking move.
Taking a screenshot right now, so I'll show that in the video. And then I'm going to revert to the original, and I'll show this in the original. I don't need to take a screenshot for it because you can see it. I'll show all of these in the original.
Reports of similar sightings have been increasing across Wisconsin, but this video stands out. Here's what was captured.
I'm terrified. I don't want that.
Okay, here we go. We're cropping into
Just
the.
don't be
This is the
scared
clearest
by it.
one. There. That's a helicopter?
That's what it looks
Is that a helicopter?
It looks like little seats.
Look, you can see stars behind it. If this was a helicopter, wouldn't there be like a thing here and this and then a propeller
And then a
thing,
person,
and
because this camera zooms in far and you can
you
see
see a
people.
window
Oh,
here?
look. Like that looks like a tiny part where the conductor would be or something.
Man sees UFO in Wisconsin. A homesteading content creator couldn't believe his eyes when he suddenly captured images of an unidentified flying object over his rural property in Montello, Wisconsin. On June 13, 2021, at around 9:22 p.m., he was outside trying to photograph the Milky Way. He had set up a tripod-mounted camera and was shooting a time-lapse sequence consisting of about 700 images of his home and the night sky. Even if the cloud covered limited visibility of the stars, the camera continued capturing long exposure shots. While he was reviewing the images, he noticed that there was a bright object appearing in 4 consecutive frames. He stated that the photographs were not altered, cropped, or improved before it was shown on camera, and he also emphasized that they were presented directly from the device. The object seems to be illuminated with visible red lights and a defined lower structure. In some frames, light seems to project downward. To make it even stranger, he heard a sound resembling an engine overhead at the time he captured the clearest UFO images above his house. He said that the object moved across the sky and out of view shortly after he captured the 4 photographs. While recording the video, he zoomed in and cropped the images to examine the object more closely. With his high-resolution camera, he noticed that this object was even stranger than it seemed. It has multiple points of light and structural detail. As he looked at the UFO, he noticed that it didn't look like a helicopter or airplane. The shape didn't match what he expected from a normal aircraft. Those around him suggested that it could be a helicopter, but he was still unsure about that, especially with the structure of the craft. After recording the video, he realized that his morning was already strange, and there were some minor unexplained events that day. These included a lightweight screened structure that was found overturned in the driveway, even if the weather was calm overnight. When the video of this UFO in Wisconsin started to spread on social media, experts began to look into the other sightings in this state, especially since there has been a wide range of shocking UFOs found in the skies. One of these happened most recently, when 2 men recorded a flying object unintentionally, just like this man did. Oshkosh UFO.
Possession of plutonium spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you know
On November 3rd to 4th, 2025, 2 men in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, unintentionally recorded footage of a mysterious unidentified aerial object while they were testing smartphone camera zoom on aircraft in the afternoon sky. The men were Alex, Ramage, aged 33, and Andrei Volk, 38, were taking a break from work, and so they wanted to use a Samsung phone to film planes. After recording the video, they decided to watch it again, and they couldn't believe what they saw on their phone. When they reviewed the footage, they saw an oval or disc-shaped object moving through the sky beneath or near where the plane had been captured. The object seemed to have a dome-like structure on top, but the way it was moving looked very different from a standard aircraft. In fact, it looked like it was gliding instead of flying like a normal plane. Both men added that they could not explain what they recorded with their phone, but they continued to stick to their story and stated that their video was not fabricated or staged. The sighting spread online really fast, and it sparked discussion among ufologists, as everyone noticed that the object in the video had a strange shape and unexplained appearance. This attracted a lot of attention. The disc-shaped object moved across the frame just after the plane passed. The video and the testimonies from witnesses have spread around, especially since the two men couldn't identify what they had seen. But the government didn't give any official statement accepting or denying what was seen. Still, ufologists say that it's clear that this was not a normal UFO, and it's even stranger when a similarly shaped UFO was spotted a few months after, still in Wisconsin. Mysterious lights in Wisconsin. In early December 2022, multiple witnesses across southeastern Wisconsin reported seeing fast-moving, unexplained lights in the night sky that looked nothing like conventional aircraft or any known aerial phenomena. The earliest widely documented account came from West Bend on the evening of December 1st, when a woman named Kimberly and her husband were driving home and noticed something unusual above the tree line. At first, she thought it was a white owl, but it became stranger because the object's motion didn't match a bird. The light swooped from above the trees, crossed in front of their car, and repeated this motion several times before other white lights appeared in the sky. She and her husband started videoing the scene, but at the same time, they had no idea what they were looking at, as they could barely wrap their heads around it. Roughly 5 miles away in Fredonia, another witness, Ken, was also filming from his home, and he was seeing the same phenomena. The video he captured shows a cluster of 4 lights moving together toward the horizon, followed by a 5th joining them as they continued in formation. According to the meteorological data for that night, there were cloudy conditions but no storms, thunderstorms, lightning or significant atmospheric disturbance, which some locals pointed out when speculating about where the lights had come from. Additional footage surfaced from other residents, including a woman named Andrea Lynn, who recorded different videos of lights in various colors moving in circular and linear patterns across the sky. In one of the videos, there's a central white light that was encircled by 3 others, forming a triangle before the peripheral lights disappeared, and the central light followed. Sightings across the state. In 2025, Wisconsin saw a strange cluster of reported sightings across the state, and that attracted a lot of attention from many. On March 24th, a witness in Manitowoc County saw a large black triangular object high above the clouds. Its silhouette was outlined by 3 bright yellow lights at each corner. The object seemed to be roughly the size of a city block, moving slowly and silently across the sky toward the southwest. It exhibited no obvious signs of a normal aircraft while hovering over the region. The light was staying still, and there was no sound among the features, making this report stand out from the more common aerial sightings. 2 months later, on May 24th, observers near Michiko described a very different aerial anomaly. Two people saw what they first thought was a perfectly white balloon-like object at a high altitude, about 35,000 to 40,000 feet, during a clear afternoon. The object was hovering briefly over them, then, suddenly, it sped up and disappeared from their sight. Ufologists used radar tracking to check for any matching aircraft in the vicinity, but there was none at that time. So, the witnesses couldn't determine whether this object was a plane or not. Well, ufologists say that this was definitely not a human-made aircraft, especially since it had a teardrop shape. It had an elongated appearance before it, vanished before their eyes. Later in the summer, on August 25th, a sighting near Two Rivers attracted the attention from sky watchers for a more subtle phenomenon. Many witnesses saw a strange light near the constellation known as the Big Dipper. The light was behaving strangely. It brightened and faded, and then moved in a pattern that some people could only think was a satellite reflecting sunlight at dusk. Satellites usually transit at high altitude and can change apparent brightness depending on the angle of illumination. Another incident happened on December 6th, when observers in Manitowoc reported a bright white light accompanied by smaller trailing lights moving silently across the night sky. The group of lights kept their formation as they traveled west to east before they gradually faded from view after roughly 15 seconds. Even if that strange aircraft was moving through the sky, it didn't make a single sound, and there was no confirmed radar contact. It was definitely not a plane passing by. This sighting added to the many strange UFOs found in Wisconsin, but we can't forget the historical UFOs seen in the region over the years, starting with one of the clearest pictures of extraterrestrial objects taken by the Wisconsin police. KFax police photos. On April 19, 1978, a UFO sighting in Colfax, Wisconsin entered UFO lore when a local police officer photographed an unexplained metallic disc-shaped object in broad daylight. This incident has been mentioned among UFO communities because it was witnessed and documented by a trained observer who used a camera at close range, and the photographs circulated for decades among the researchers and enthusiasts. On that fateful day, Officer Mark Coltrane was on routine patrol near the small town when he pulled over in a quiet area around midday. Suddenly, his police radio started crackling and acting up. He then noticed a shiny, metallic object in the shape of a disc slowly ascending into the sky at a close distance from where he was parked. Coltrane stepped out of his vehicle with a Polaroid camera, and then he took several photographs, and in at least one frame, the underside of the object was visible with discernible surface features. He only saw the UFO for a few minutes before the object accelerated upwards and then disappeared from his view. After the encounter, Coltrane remained at the scene for about 2 hours, later revealing that he hesitated to report the incident immediately because he was afraid that no one would believe him, even if he took photos with his Polaroid. These photos became some of the clearest images of UFOs in Wisconsin and have been scanned and shared in UFO archives for many years. It's one of the biggest pieces of evidence of UFOs in the country. Aside from the presence of photographic evidence in the Colfax case, it was also witnessed by a uniformed police officer on duty, which also makes it credible. But there has been no confirmation from the government or academic institutions that confirms the object's nature. As with many UFO cases from the 1970s, skepticism persists among experts, who note that photographic anomalies can sometimes arise from lens artifacts, lighting effects, or misinterpretations of conventional objects at unusual angles. Despite the lack of definitive verification, the 1978 Colfax police photographs remain one of the more discussed historical UFO cases from Wisconsin. Even if this UFO sighting was very solid, there was another one a few years earlier where they saw a UFO that literally landed before their eyes. Mullen UFO landing.
I was carrying the two cats. I was walking to the garage, and I got by this corner, right by the house here, and I looked, and there was this weird object, funny noises, and it was really bright, and I didn't know what I should do. So I was going back and forth, and finally I threw the cat in the garage. And then I ran to the house around the corner, and I couldn't get the door open.
When I first saw it, I was standing approximately right here, but I couldn't get too good of a view of it because the brush and the trees are in the way. So then I went back into the house, and I got my coat on. My two youngest boys and Jane were following me. We went over here to get a better look at the object that was sitting on the road. And my curiosity still wanted me to get a better view of it. So we walked down. Of course, the ground was covered with snow. And my car was sitting here in the driveway. And of course, there were snowbanks on the side of the roads, and there's where I got my estimate of the size of the object, approximately 12 feet in diameter, with the markings in the snow. And I would judge the object at the center of it was approximately 6 feet high. It was like a turtle. My two boys and my girl started to proceed here closer. My girl told me not to go any closer to it. She ran back in the house.
He was going to go walking up to it, and I went back to the house and told my mom that he was going to go up there and get closer to it. And she came out and she yelled at him.
My wife came out and hollered at me and told me not to be foolish and go any closer to it, not knowing exactly what the object was on the road. And of course, I did get a very good view of it from here, as there was nothing blocking my vision on the road.
And we went in the house and we called the deputy sheriff. And when the deputy said hello, there was a boom and it was gone. I went out and I couldn't see it anymore.
Well, Monty, my oldest boy, he was all upset. He told my other two boys, now don't say anything. Don't say anything to kids at school. We don't want nothing of this to get out. And of course, Janie was in tears. She says, well, I know what I saw. She says, you trying to tell me I'm crazy or something? She said, I know what we saw. She says, don't try to tell me I didn't see anything, because she said, I know I saw it. And she was in tears and everything else that night. And of course, the undersheriff, I apologized when he left me off here, because I thought, well, now we didn't find anything. He'll think I'm a little off too. And he said, no, don't forget, just forget about it. I said, well, okay, let's forget about it. And I said, but don't tell anybody then. Matter of fact, I even mentioned him. I said, don't tell anybody. I said, just forget it then, because I said, let's drop the whole story.
I've known Mr. Baker for about 30 years, and he and his family have been here a long time. And when this story broke on the UFOs, he asked me not to put it in the paper because of the anxiety his family was being put through by callers and curiosity seekers. And so I thought that I wouldn't. And he was very appreciative. I honored his wish to not have it put in the paper.
On the evening of March 13, 1975, a rural highway near Mullen, Wisconsin became the setting for what would become one of the most shocking UFO sightings in America. At roughly 9 p.m., 15-year-old Jane Baker was outside her family's home gathering cats for the night when she heard an unusual high-pitched noise and noticed an intense light coming from the road, leading into town. As she moved closer, she saw a silvery disc-shaped object with a domed top resting on the snow-covered roadside, with its glow illuminating the entire hill. Around the object's midsection, there were rows of alternating red and green lights that kept blinking on and off, and the dome itself emitted a yellow-white illumination that lit up the surrounding area. Jane was standing about 400 to 500 feet from the object when she first observed it, and she described it as unlike any vehicle or machinery she had ever seen. Jane ran back to the house and called out to her father, Philip Baker, who at first dismissed her excitement. He decided to believe her and put on his shoes and coats, joining his daughter, wife, and 2 of her brothers as they walked toward the object. By this time, the blinking lights had subsided, leaving only a square lighted panel in the center of the craft, casting a steady glow. The family heard metal-on-metal sounds from the inside, described as loud banging mixed with a continuous, high-pitched whine, but there was no silhouette or figure visible through the lights. They watched the object for several minutes before retreating back into the house to call the local authorities. When Ashland County Undersheriff George Rhee arrived and spoke with the Bakers, the object suddenly vanished with a loud boom, appearing on the ground for about 10 minutes. Rhee didn't find any physical trace like tracks or debris at the site. His investigation uncovered different reports from local law enforcement and residents of bright aerial objects moving through the night sky that same evening. Some deputies revealed that they also saw other luminous objects exhibiting unusual movement patterns over northern Wisconsin. The following morning, Jane returned to the site where the object had been seen and claimed to have observed what she believed to be the same or similar craft hovering near treetops, though this second sighting was brief, and it left little additional evidence. They later talked to ufology researchers and featured in episodes of television programs about anomalous aerial phenomena, but there has been no solid proof like images. But over a decade before this happened, one of the first recorded UFO sightings happened in Wisconsin, shocking many. Eagle River. On the morning of April 18, 1961, Joe Simonton, a chicken farmer living a few miles outside Eagle River, said he heard a strange sound outside his home while having breakfast. Stepping into his yard, he saw a silver metallic object, about 30 feet in diameter and 12 feet high, descending and hovering just above the ground in the open field near his farmhouse. The craft's surface was brighter than chrome, and it even had exhaust ports along its periphery. Simonton claimed the object landed and a hatch or door opened on the side facing him. From this opening, 3 humanoid figures emerged. He later described them as about 5 feet tall, dressed in dark blue or black uniforms with turtleneck tops and knit cap-like helmets, and possessing dark skin and hair. In his retelling, the beings did not speak, but one held a silvery jug-like container and made a gesture that Simonton interpreted as a request for water. After fetching water from his basement, he said he returned and handed the jug to the figure before observing others inside the craft, preparing what he later described as pancakes on a flameless heating surface. In exchange for the water, the occupants reportedly gave him several of these cooked items, which he later described as tasting like cardboard. According to Simonton, the encounter lasted only a few minutes. After handing back the jug and the brief exchange, the beings re-entered their craft. The saucer then ascended rapidly at a 45-degree angle and disappeared from sight in seconds. His account drew massive attention that time, especially since he said he filled water and traded for food. It was also reported during the daytime. The UFO community couldn't believe it when a man captured a UFO above his house in Wisconsin. But this wasn't the only sighting that happened in this state. From the disc-shaped UFOs to the landings, lights, and saucers, many of these strange sightings have been spotted in Wisconsin. Which of these shocked you the most? Let's know your thoughts in the comments.